Welcome to the Stash Cast, where innovation meets real estate. Let's dive in.
Jake, I really appreciate you being here. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me, my friend.
So I forget how we came into contact, but we had a pre-call and I was super excited to hear about what you're doing and what you're up to, your background. And so your name is Jake Guso.
Yes.
And why don't you give us a little bit of background of who you are and what you do, why we're talking today.
So thank you for having me again. Yes, my name is Jake Guso. So I'm the co-founder of Rig Hut, which is a truck parking technology platform. It's a software basically provided to industrial parking operators. I've spent pretty much the entirety of my career in the real estate business. Just out of college, I started on the property management side for a local investor down here in Miami. Then I moved into brokerage activities. Then we started buying and stabilizing distressed stuff out in the Midwest, primarily in Kansas City. And then we started Rig Hut, which has kind of had several different evolutions that actually started as a management business and then morphed into the technology. But that's kind of the elevator pitch.
So I guess why big rig parking, truck parking?
Yeah. So originally, again, we were viewing truck parking from the lens of a real estate investor, right? So again, we're local here in South Florida. I don't remember exactly how I stumbled upon the opportunity initially, but basically it checked all the boxes in terms of fundamentals, right? And long-term sort of growth. If you look at South Florida, we're geographically, land constrained market, right? We've got physical sort of borders, right? Everglades on the west, Atlantic Ocean on the east. Within South Florida, we've also got very little industrially zoned properties, right? Those that are industrially zoned tend to be targeted by the big box warehouse developers, especially, over the last 4 or 5 years. And the municipalities do not like the truck parking use, right? So we're already sort of supply constrained. There's high barriers to entry in the forms of zoning and regulations. And every time Prologis comes down here and snaps up a piece of vacant land and builds a fulfillment center on it, they're simultaneously removing, another piece of the supply equation and adding demand, right, for the movement of goods coming out of that fulfillment center. So we saw rates, right, parking rates going straight up into the right down here. And that was the original sort of spark. And then as we started looking more throughout Florida, we realized this isn't a local problem. This is a national problem. It's exacerbated in like coastal freight markets, right? Primarily port facilities, port markets. And so that was the original spark. And like I said, we built a management company. So we convinced a couple of guys down here in South Florida to let us operate these facilities on their behalf. We thought that would be a low cost way to kind of learn the business. And as we sort of scaled that up, we found ourselves managing like 800 drivers using Google Sheets and taking payments with Venmo and cash and checks. And we started looking for software. It didn't exist. So we built it.
That's awesome. I love it. What does it cost for truck parking? Like, what is it per night? It must be per night, right?
It depends. So there's hourly, there's per day, there's per week, there's per month. And it's hyper local, like any other sort of real estate rate question. So I'll just rattle some off, right? So Miami, $600 a month, $30 to $35 a day. If you go to Broward County, which is like slightly north of us, it's like $450 to $500 a month, then $25 to $30 a day. Port Newark, $750 a month. Port Long Beach, so like Southern California, $800, $850, something like that. And then you've got like the Dallas Fort Worth, $150 to $200 a month. Chicago, same thing. So it varies pretty widely.
Mm-hmm. It's such a interesting niche to find and then figure out that you can fill it. Have you found more success in particular markets or, you're talking about the fluctuating rates based on where you're at, or is it kind of universal across any city that has trucks going in and out of it at some sort of quantity? You found that there's a demand for this.
So I'll talk about it from the Rig Hut perspective, which is a software business, right? So market agnostic, it doesn't really matter where our customer is, as long as he's got, over 30 or 40 spaces. Generally, we can provide value. Most of the customers that Rig Hut brings on is their legacy tech stack is like zero, right? It's like what we were using. It's Google Sheets and Zelle. That's what
Mhm.
sometimes guys are using like self-storage software and they try to repurpose it. But from the rig hub perspective, market agnostic, I mean, where we see most interest from like an investor level is primary market. So like think NFL teams, right? Wherever those are, that's where people are generally looking.
For
I kind
acquisition,
of, yeah, I kind of
acquisition
toggled back and
opportunities.
yeah, so
Yeah.
I kind of toggled back and forth there between two different things. But yes, when I say investor activity, I mean outdoor storage in general, not necessarily truck parking, but there's some interesting trends going on there with the traditional iOS sort of institutional guys moving into the truck park.
hmm Well, yeah, even industrial. Yeah, I was talking to the developer last week, and he was like, "Yeah, we just kind of figured our way out into data centers." I was like, "What? How do you even do that?" It's basically the heated and climate controlled shell, essentially, that has a ton of power and a ton of water. I
Yep.
imagine it's a similar, same but different sort of thing. It's super specialized within that industrial niche.
And most guys will stumble upon it,
Mhm.
right? Like if you're a traditional industrial investor, developer, or a small bay guy, big box guy, you're gonna run into it somewhere. Generally, most people find it interesting, right? Like, hey, I could monetize, otherwise vacant land, and then they go down the rabbit hole.
So this kind of puts you in the catbird seat as far as being able to make markets and create transactions out of that. Is that something that you guys have considered or pursued?
You mean like activating, uh, providing the tools to
Transactions, yeah.
activate sites?
Well, I guess
Yeah,
both. Like you could activate new sites. Like you could go out and say, hey, here's the demand in this market. We think that there's an opportunity and maybe even locate a site, or you could help facilitate investment sales essentially by saying, hey, here's a plug and play solution.
we try to stay out of that. We try to stay really focused on our lane, right? Which is
Yeah.
building a good product and selling the software to operators that have a need. I mean, we stumble across deals all the time. What I'm trying not to do is put myself in a position where I'm potentially upsetting people or they think that we're competing or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So we kind of stay in our lane. But yeah, we certainly have some interesting data in that respect.
Have you, like, even just from a data publishing standpoint, are you able to put reports like that out there?
No. So part of the challenge, also part of the opportunity is there's no central repository for truck parking rates and occupancy, right? Like you're not going to find these things on CoStar or LoopNet. There's no Radius Plus kind of
So,
product. There's no comps. There's no nothing. So that information is very valuable. A lot of people don't want that information disseminated. And we tell all of our customers that it's in all of our service agreements that the data is theirs. We don't repackage, repurpose, resell, or do anything with that. We really only even have access to the degree that we need to in order to provide service to the customer. Eventually someone's going to crack that nut. Like someone's going to come out with the Radius Plus for truck parking.
what, I haven't heard of Radius Plus. What is that?
It's like a comp tool or rate setting tool, like revenue optimization tool for self-storage.
Oh, I have seen that actually.
Yeah.
It's really cool. Well, so you started off as you're in commercial real estate and then you got into the founder and tech startup role. What similarities have you found between the two and what has the learning curve been?
There's a lot of learning curves.
Yeah.
So,
That's why I started the podcast.
I mean, I'd say the biggest, if we're talking just fundamental difference, right? Like from my brokerage career to now is, in the brokerage business, it's all you, right? Like you may have some team, right? You may have like a junior broker and a senior broker. You might sit somewhere in the middle of that stack, but pretty much it's all you. Like you've got to generate your own business and you kind of eat what you kill. It's the same thing in the startup world, but you're working with a team, right? So it's not like I'm just going to dial more, set more meetings, pitch more, list more, dial more on the listings, and then I'm going to generate more. Like we all kind of have to align and work together to this common goal, which has been interesting for me to learn because everything else in my career has pretty much been me on my own. I'd say that's probably the steepest learning curve that I've personally had, but I think my background in real estate has really helped me on the sales and customer acquisition side, because it's still a real estate centric sort of question, right? It's like kind of similar to short-term rentals. Like if I had to define it as a product type, but you're still doing the same thing, right? Generate revenue out of this piece of property, figure out how to run it efficiently, and generate, what we would call NOI. These things don't quite trade on cap rates yet. They kind of trade on land value. There's one comp that traded on a cap rate that I'll tell you about just quickly. It's a site named Miami Truck Parking, which is like the cream of the crop in terms of location, amenities, rates. And it's down here in Miami. When this property sold, was like peaked lunacy pricing down here. I think it was like 21-ish. Industrial land in Dade County was commanding like somewhere in the neighborhood of $3 million an acre. Saw some trades like 3.1, maybe 3.2. This site sold on a cap rate at, I think it was like 4 or 4.1, something like that. And it's a parking lot, right?
Yeah.
But extremely well located. It's on the Golden Glades interchange. It's arguably the best located facility in Dade County for truck parking. And their rates at the time were like 40% higher than what the average guy was charging.
Wow.
In the county.
Well, I mean, that's interesting even in and of itself, because it shows that there's potentially an emergence of, an investable market in that. I have two questions. One, like, are your prospects and clients, large companies like, you see the Love's truck stops off the interstate or Flying J. So is that your customer set? And then the second question is, as we're starting to see a rise of self-driving trucks that are maybe not here fully yet, but are on the horizon, do you have any worries or concerns that might disrupt your business?
Answer to the first question is no. Our typical customer is not an enterprise grade user. If we're looking at parking operations, there's the Love's Pilot Travel Centers of America style truck stops, travel centers. They're catering towards the overnight driver, right? And they provide some other ancillary services and amenities, QSR, diesel, truck repair, stuff like that. Then we have what we call managed park, which is mostly our ideal customer profile, which is a guy that operates typically like 1 to 3 yards. They're typically just surface parking lots with a fence, a gate, lights, and some cameras. They don't offer any of those ancillary services, no diesel, none of that stuff. It's basically just a surface parking lot. Typically it's a family run business, right? So it's like a father and a son, or maybe it's, 3 generations. They've owned the property for a really long time, and their basis is low enough where this is generating like substantial amounts of cash flow. And again, those are the guys that are used to running the business on Google Sheets and Zelle, which it works. Like you can do that up to, I don't know, maybe 100 drivers or so. Like if you really want to beat your head against the wall, but there's a better way, right? You can save yourself a lot of time. So that's the answer to the first question as to who our sort of ideal customer is currently. We do have some products coming out for the truck stops. To your second question with, autonomous trucks and electrification of the, supply chain. If you wave the magic wand and got rid of all the humans that had to drive the trucks between today and tomorrow, yes, that would create a problem. I think it's going to be much more of a gradual evolution. And I think over time, a different set of problems will arise that will be well poised to solve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. It's not going to happen overnight.
No.
And even as I was formulating the question, I was like, well, there's still going to be you're still going to have a lag between when the truck might be able to be filled, or it gets to a spot and they're not ready for it yet. So there's still going to be that, where do you put it? You can't park on the side of the road.
Yeah, there's still going to be staging. There's going to be delays. And unless we can figure out a way to get these things to run basically 24/7 and charge really fast, they're going to have to stop for extended periods of time.
The Stash Cast is brought to you by Needle. What if you could use data and analytics to predict real estate transactions? With Needle, you can. Check it out at needle.us to learn more.
So going back to your ICP though, how did you figure it out? Like, because like you said, there's not a database for any of this. So did that come from your own personal experience? But then even if it came from your personal experience, how do you reach new customers? Like, can you create a Google ad that targets these guys? I don't know.
So sort of, yeah, you can. If you've built up the sort of data set, you could. Our process, to be honest, is still super manual, which again, same thing I mentioned before with the data and rates. It's a challenge, but it's also part of the opportunity, right? So like when I was dialing for brokerage transactions, you're dialing from some repo and that guy's been called 15 or 20 times in the last month by everybody and their mother, right? So there's a lot of call resistance. Managed parking operators are really hard to find. So if you type in truck parking in any major city, the results on Google may be 10% of what actually exists. The rest of them, you got to find however you can find them. But when you call that owner or that operator, he doesn't even know how you got his number. So he's, if I had to quantify it, it's like he'd be 50 times more likely to want to have a conversation with someone on my team.
Because he's not fatigued from...
He's never been called by anybody. And then the opener is like pretty good, right? So the message is basically like, hey, we were you, right? So, hey, Stash, my name is Jake. I'm in the truck parking business down in South Florida. We used to operate facilities down here. You know, we found ourselves running that business with Google Sheets and QuickBooks, you know, and generally that's like, oh yeah, that's what I do. Right. And then you have the opening to be like, well, you know, we built this product that automates your inventory, automates your payments, your billings, your collections processing, access control. So we've got a pretty good success rate.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the angle that we have taken with Needle in trying to target brokers. Like, hey, do you want to know what deals are going to trade? Of course you do. So you can go and get in front of it before your competitor does.
Yep.
Like, but then how do the truckers know where the parking is?
So our business is providing service to the landlord, right? Like our product is built to make the landlord's life easier, reduce his admin and labor costs, right? Drivers can go to the righut.com and they will see, you know, a portion of our sites, which are listed on display, and they can book parking, but that's not really the core offering. Typically we are integrating RigHut into sites that are already full.
I'm sorry, what do you mean by that? Sites that are already full?
So our highest conversion rate is on these guys that I'm talking about, right? That are using some stitched together tech stack to operate a facility that's already at or near capacity.
I see. So they already have a built-in client base, clientele.
Exactly.
So they've got this inventory, rotating inventory, maybe of 100 drivers who they've just been working with for 10 years or something. And these guys just know that they're there, probably figured it out word of mouth. I see. All right.
It'd be like moving an apartment building from Google Sheets to Buildium, right? Like Buildium, yeah, it'll give you the tools to list the vacancies on Zillow or whatever, but Buildium's not sending you customers.
No, they're not. Interesting. So how do you monetize it?
It's a SaaS fee. Use a Buildium example. You or someone else pays Buildium a fee based on how many units they have under management using the software. We have a similar model. We went through a lot of pricing discovery on that. Honestly, we still are. Like some guys, you know, we think our stuff is relatively cost effective. Like we still get some price objections. And then some other guys are like, how is it so cheap? Like, where else are you guys charging me? How else do you make? But generally guys are paying us somewhere in like it's like a few $100 a month, call it like $400 to $700, $800 generally for most sites.
It's not bad at all. If it makes your life that much easier and you've got, say, 100 drivers that you've got to keep tabs on, handles collection and payments and all that, that's tremendous.
Yeah. And a lot of these guys like will build their online, like, just like I'm saying, like it's hard to find these things, right? it's hard for the drivers to find them too, unless they know it exists. So, we'll do some stuff like we'll create, whatever is required to get you an online presence. We can build you sites, we can build you landing pages, we can integrate all that stuff into the Rig Hub backend, give you technical on off page SEO optimization, drive more traffic to your facility, even though it's not really the core offering. Like, one of my fundamental beliefs just in the aggregate in truck parking is rates have to increase substantially for it to even exist. Like, if you look at, I always pick on Miami because it's my backyard. It's just like what I know best.
Yeah.
But if you take like your standard, regularly shaped, substantially improved piece of land, which means like basically you can park on it, right?
A big square or rectangle.
A big square with like asphalt millings, or maybe it's got an asphalt surface and a fence and lights, right? You can call your favorite net lease broker, put the sign out front, wait for the phone to ring, do some tours, and you're probably going to lease that site for like 20,000 to low 20s a month per acre, triple net, right? Now, if I take that same site and instead of calling my favorite net lease broker and going through the exercise and taking all that time, but eventually when I secure that tenant, me as the owner, I'm not doing much, right? It's a single net lease user.
Right.
If I take that same property and now I go operate a managed truck parking facility, right? I'm going to get 25 trucks per acre, more or less, 25 truck and trailer combinations. And then I just told you rates down in Miami are $600 per combination on average, right? So we're talking somewhere in the neighborhood of $15,000 a month gross for way more work.
Right.
Why would anybody take that risk and additional sort of administrative burden if they weren't being commensurately rewarded? I think it's just the opaqueness of information in the market, right? So like, I know of sites in South Florida that are charging $750, $800, $850 a month. And then I know sites that are a mile away that are charging $500.
Mm.
And they're all full. So like, where is the real market price? I don't know. No one has tested this yet. I'm trying to convince some of my customers down here to test it, but generally the sentiment that I get is,
if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah. It's like, it's full. I'm not doing anything. I know the customers that are there. I don't have to deal with any churn. I don't have to meet new people. I don't have to worry about who's coming in. Do they get along with everybody else? Like, they're just, if I had to pick a word, it would be like complacent or comfortable.
But it's interesting to me that you found one of these dark corners of the market that hasn't been pierced by data transparency. Not yet. I mean, you could create theoretically, if you can get your users on board. I mean, maybe the pitch is, hey guys, we can make you a lot more money if we can open this up.
It's on the roadmap. If you look at self-storage, right, every market's got its like target occupancy rate. They're going to push rates until you hit that, right? You dip below that target occupancy, then you stabilize rates, you fill up again, then you push rates again, you drop it. Like, that exists in truck parking, but no one's really trying.
Right. Because it's much more of a niche. So have you like surveyed the country to figure out how many of these operators are out there that fit your current ICP?
We haven't surveyed. We've just done like the manual grueling work.
Yeah. One could call that surveying.
Yeah.
It sounds a lot more scientific than it is.
Yeah. I'll keep the number to myself because I think that's I don't think anybody really has that number, but we have done the work.
Well, I guess I'm just curious.
Like, we keep finding more.
Yeah. Of course.
We haven't hit that ceiling.
So it's like the plan then, well, let's just go fill up on all these guys that we know are there, and it's an easier sale than trying to maybe go up into the vertical of enterprise level sales.
Yes, that's generally our thesis.
Because then it could give you essentially pricing power, and then you can create a market.
Certainly, all things that we've thought about. To your point, we're super focused on like one ICP and building one product, one solution for that guy before we kind of expand and start thinking like, okay, how can we widen or create a new market?
I mean, if you have a market that's working well, why would you change it?
Yeah, I'm not going to say there's super high barriers to entry on the technology side of the business. I mean, it does cost a substantial amount of money and time to build something like we've built, but this isn't rocket science, right? It's property management software. I'd say part of our sort of running start is that you can't find these guys easily. And I've found that just no one really wants to do that work. Like no one wants to sit there and scroll through Google satellite imagery and find these yards.
I guess that either that or just driving around industrial areas of town trying to figure out where the yards are. And then, okay, you have like Landglide. Okay, who owns this?
That's how we started. So like originally, now it's try to do as much as we can remotely, right? But like originally, most of the yards that we found and pitched, we were like physically in the truck, finding the yard and walking into the, like figuring out how to get in the gate. And then there's an office trailer. And then we figure out, what time that guy's supposed to be in the trailer. And then we knock on the door and he takes us out.
Oh, but I can see it. I haven't been there exactly, but I've been through the equivalent with the apartment business.
It's a similar thing, right? It's all a similar skill set. It's sales, it's marketing, it's prospecting, it's follow up, and making sure that you provide a good product. And on the brokerage side, it's a good level of service, right? Like, are you actually doing what you said you were going to do?
That is a difficult thing. It sounds a lot easier than it is. And I think to one of your previous points, yes, it is just a property management software, but on the flip side, it takes a lot of work and effort to build a solution. We've been at it for quite some time and there's still room for improvement. And then trying to go out and monetize it and create marketing around that. I hope you make a shit ton of money.
Thanks. You too.
Okay. So
I don't think it'll ever be done.
Well, it never is.
Yeah, it's never done.
And that's kind of like the pursuit of human beings in a free market capitalist economy is just keep improving. So, but to that point, like, what's your end goal? What's your exit look? I mean, have you, granted you're in it, you're building it, you don't necessarily want to sell, but like, have you thought forward to what do I want to be when I grow up, basically?
It changes, right? So like, I think most entrepreneurs, when they start any business, they say like, hey, we're going to be at this for X number of years and we're going to sell for X hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's the original vision. If you took like the entire pool of entrepreneurs, right, and you told them like, hey, this is how hard it's going to be for you to like actually make money, I think 95% of them would just not do it, right? They'd go get a job and be like, I'll take the trade-off. But when we first started, that was definitely like the vision, right? It's like, okay, let's go out, let's build this thing, let's sign some customers, contract them, and then we'll sell it to, we didn't know who that was going to be at the time. The more that we've built out the tech stack and the functionality and refined processes, it's like the more opportunity we see to create value with the same infrastructure that we already have. So the real answer is I don't know. Right? Like I see how some entrepreneurs get into the I'll never sell side of the world because there's just so many things you can do, right? There's so many different products that you can launch or services that you can provide, so many different ways that you can kind of expand your market, right? So like truck parking, then you go truck stops, then you go to like, call it fleet management, depot facilities. I mean, it's like endless potential. And it's like, okay, obviously, yes, someone comes in and says, here's a stupid amount of money with, no carve outs and like you walk away.
Yeah. Where do I sign?
Yeah. Everything's got a price, but realistically, like say you take that check, what are you going to do? You're probably just going to go do it again. Right. And now you've got to start from zero again, which to me, the 0 to 1 is the hardest part.
Well, but I mean, to that point, you're not necessarily at zero because you do have all the learnings that you've built and accumulated. And then you can say, well, if I was going to do it again, here's what I would do differently. I've heard of a couple of different guys that have had exits. And then essentially once they're non-compete expires, just go and build back better.
I know a bunch of guys that have done that.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, that's cool. I think, I don't know. The first one was definitely the hardest one.
For sure. And you're right. Like, say it took, for sake of round numbers, say it took us 3 years to get to where we are today. Like if we started from zero again, we could probably get to where we are today in maybe, I don't know, 6 months or 9 months. So you get to the same point faster, but you're still back at zero. And if
You have a lot of zeros in your bank account.
and that's assuming you can do it in the same business. Say you do sign a non-compete and you've got to do something that's similar, but it's like a completely new market or it's a new product that's similar. It's like now you're back in the you don't know what you don't know phase, and you're in the discovery. And so the long-winded answer to your question is I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Did you ever think you were going to be in the startup software business?
No. Never in a million years. Never in a million years. I've always been really interested in, it's going to sound really cliche, but real estate, right?
Yeah.
Like the classic story. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad when I was like 12 or whatever. And ever since then, it's been like, how do I figure out how to do it? So I had my life mapped out where it was like, all right, let's generate some cash with brokerage activities. Let's buy some high yield stuff where we can afford to and stabilize them and exit them. And then we were just going to get this flywheel going. And then like 30 years later, it'll all be worth a lot of money and you'll control a lot of assets. By happenstance, I met a couple of tech founders here in Miami that have become pretty close friends of mine. I saw what they were doing. I wasn't interested in it at that point, but I saw the potential, right? And I saw the leverage that you could get from an actual opco. And then when we stumbled on the truck parking software thing, it was just kind of like the right place, the right time. We were on the right people. And originally, again, it was like a service business. And then we kind of built the tech around it. And over time, we've become like technology business owners. But when we first launched Rig Hut, it was like, I couldn't tell you the first thing about how the technology worked.
Mm-hmm. So I guess in doing this, you've had to catalog every different combination of trucks and trailers that there are and figure out how to monetize that on behalf of your clients. Is that
sort of? So we're getting to that point. How it works right now is user-based, right? So does this tenant have access to the yard? Yes, let him in. We're not saying, yes, we try to get the drivers or the tenants to input accurate information on what is physically being brought into the facility and when it's removed, and making sure they are accurate with their user management portal and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But it still relies on the user to input that information, which means they don't do it all the time.
They don't. I imagine that truck drivers aren't the most technologically savvy. Nothing against them. They help our economy run.
Yeah. I mean, certainly you've got to provide for like a really clean user experience for most. There's some guys that pick it up right away. There's some guys that I say this like kind of as a joke, but it's real. Like they literally they don't have a smartphone. Like it's a brick or a flip phone, right? So like our access control thing, for example, originally what we had was we have a driver portal and we have a button that says open gate where we verify the user, right? They can trigger the gate. And then we ran into like the flip phone issue and we were like, all right, we need a solution for that. So let's put a backup where they can text, right? And we'll search the user based on the phone number and all that jazz and we'll trigger the gate. What was the question you asked, Ash?
I was theorizing that you had like mapped all the different combinations of trucks and trailers and, the length and things like that.
So the answer is not yet. That's how it currently works, but we're releasing a pretty cool product that will automate all that away.
Oh, that's cool. Because I imagine what you could do is then position that to your clients or your customers and be like, hey, if somebody's got a 53-foot trailer, it's this. But if they just have a short like shipping container, it's this price.
That's the idea. Usually it's the inverse. So they'll say I have a container and then they bring in the 53-footer.
Yeah, but then you can verify it once they get there. But then if you're going to do that, you need physical hard tech to be able to actually scan what they're like. What would it be, like LiDAR or something like that, or a camera? I don't know.
It's cameras.
It's honestly, it's fascinating what you're doing. It's so cool. I just love it. I love it for you.
Thank you.
Did you take venture capital, or I think we talked about this in our pre-call, or was it just initial friends and family, or how did that go?
We have It's not venture capital. So we do have a capital partner. It's a family office out of New York. And that truly is like a family office. Like we interface with the original founder and his son, and they're really like an operating business that's kind of at the intersection of real estate and tech, right? So like self-storage, they had the self-storage platform, they spun out the technology business. Their original interest in outdoor storage was from the iOS investment perspective. So they have iOS platform, and then they were same kind of playbook. They're like, how do we, spin out the tech angle behind this thesis? And that's how we met. And it turns out coincidentally that one of the guys there is friends with Jose, my co-founder's cousin. So there was like that warm intro that we didn't really know about,
Right.
but that helped. And it certainly helped like speed up conversation, but they've been amazing partners, like ton of IP that we've been able to use and, reuse without having to figure it out the hard way.
Oh, that's good.
But yeah, it's just us right now, us and them.
Mm-hmm. We're about to go on our seed round of capital raise. Because we did an initial friends and family, but we're at a point where it's like, okay, if we're going to add some gasoline to this fire, we're going to need some more capital. But more specifically, it's like, I don't necessarily just want somebody that's like, hey, here's a check. I want somebody that's going to be like, here's a check. And oh, by the way, we can open these doors for you that you otherwise wouldn't be able to do.
100%. That's like holy grail. Like I would still do that today if we found another person that was like, hey, we're not just capital. We can do X, Y, and Z, that I know will be very hard and a long time. I would still probably take that deal. So I would say if you can find somebody like that,
we're working on it.
Definitely consider it.
Yeah. Well, this has been great, Jake. I've had a lovely conversation.
Likewise.
Is there anything you want to ask me?
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to talk about Needle. Tell the story. How'd you get there? The whole story.
So, the hypothesis behind Needle is what if you could use data and analytics to predict real estate transactions? And that came I've been in brokerage since 2008. I got my first license in 2008. And when I first got started, you still had the apartment list. I was in Southern California at the time, and it was a big book. And they had put it into Excel for, but that's what it was. And then I ended up coming here to Cincinnati in 2011. I didn't have access to CoStar and Yardi Matrix wasn't even a thing. And so I just had to pull the auditor's data, the county auditor, and figure out what are the apartment buildings. And I had to manually search for phone numbers. And once I got I was doing rent surveys, and I was like, hey, if you'd be kind enough to help me out, I'd be happy to share a copy of the rent survey with you. And I just need your email address. And so that's how I built my list. But then as my career progressed, started to get listings, started to get traction. And I started to see the data improving. And we were using RealHound, which was a Microsoft Access-based CRM system. And it was great. I loved it. If it was still up and alive and supported, I would probably still be using it. But I don't know, it fell off. But it had this great feature where if you had a property that you marked as for sale, and you put in the price and what the cap rate was, you could click a button and hit match buyers, and it would create a list of all the buyers that met that criteria. It was like, this is phenomenal. If you've got 20 properties and I'm like, hey, Jake, you've got 20 properties. I've got a buyer. Do you want to sell any of them? It's a flat blanket no. Absolutely not. Yeah. Click.
Always.
But if I call you and say, hey, Jake, I'm calling about timber trails. I've got a client, these are his requirements. Is that something you might be interested in having a conversation about? You're going to be like, you know what? We were actually just looking at that deal. Or yeah, we would be receptive to an offer. If you can get in front of somebody at the right time, they're going to be much more receptive to that conversation. So then the puzzle's like, well, how do you figure that out? Because there are signals that properties give off. We look at deals all the time on a T12, 6, and 3. annualized basis, even a T2 or T1, if it's a lease up deal or if it's had some fluctuations in vacancy or occupancy. And so what we did is we ingested 10 years worth of sale data as well as rental rates and occupancy data, incorporating loan maturities and loan data information into that, and said, okay, let's take all these things together. And even looking at things like ownership behavior patterns, like some owners who just have owned it forever and don't have any plans to ever sell. But then there are some that flip in and out of deals every 3 to 5 years. And so it's like, okay, if we can look at all these signals and combine them, we can generally figure out which ones are likely to sell. We're anywhere from 20 to 40% accurate in identifying
That's
transactions. Yeah. Whereas, you're in brokerage, so it's like a 3% hit rate.
Yeah.
And that's just to get somebody on the phone. And then once you get it, it's like, okay.
Have you been using it internally for your brokerage business?
Yeah.
For a while?
I've closed a couple of deals off of it. I've got a couple of listings. I've got a virtual assistant that I'm going to have start. He's cataloging all the deals that we see out on the market and flagging the ones that we predicted. And then we were doing some marketing around that to be like, Needle predicted, market verified. And so you'll see some of those posts out there. Yeah.
That's really cool. Could you also predict, like using that same example, right? If you have a VA going out and surveying like listed properties in whatever zip code, whatever geographic boundary, could you predict which one of them are not or unlikely to sell? Like ones that just have like crazy pricing guidance or something like that, and get ahead of those?
I guess elaborate a little more. I think the answer is yes, but what do you mean?
So like if you have, say you have 100 properties that are active right now in your zip code that are, otherwise target customers, right? You missed them somehow, like you didn't get them fast enough or you lost the listing proposal to somebody else, right? Could Needle use that same data set to say, hey, of these 100 properties, like these 3 are just like crazy out of market and otherwise don't.
Yeah. We don't have that capability built in right now. But yeah, I think that's a future evolution of, okay, well, so the 20 to 40% accurate is, okay, if we name 100 properties in a market, anywhere from 20 to 40 of those are going to trade within the next 7 months.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Super valuable information.
Right? It's great. And like, I think it's that, like everybody you talk to is like, this is a great solution.
How do you price it?
It's a SaaS based on either one user, one market is like right now it's $100 a month. One user, one region would be $200 a month. And then one user, whole country would be $300 a month.
Sounds super cheap.
And I almost wonder if we underpriced it and if people aren't valuing it enough because of that. Well, if it's so cheap, how can it be so good? We looked at CoStar, and if you're going to have one of their subscriptions, like $1,000, $1,200 a month. So,
but it's just data.
What CoStar is. Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's one of our points in our pitch deck is that the other solutions out there are essentially like encyclopedias for the commercial real estate industry. Yeah. They're not offering any insights into likely sellers. And then we also have a buyer matching algorithm, and that's like 70% accurate. So that's saying, okay, if this is 200 units in Columbus, Ohio, 1990s vintage. Well, if you own a similar property to that, either in Columbus or Indy or surrounding markets that have similar demographics, chances are you're going to be interested in buying this property. And so that is what populates our buyer list or our buyer matching algorithm. Our ICPs are brokers. That's the first one we've gone after. And even more specifically, like independent shops, brokers who are part of a larger franchise organization, and then like regional or what I call super regional firms that are concentrated in just one market or one kind of region. Then we see opportunity to be able to incorporate and really integrate with existing like PMS systems for asset managers and acquisition people and be like, hey, we think this one's ripe. might it be time to think about an exit? Loan brokers, and even we've had other technology companies want to, come and white label what we're doing. So we've got a lot of irons in the fire, and we're having a meeting next week, actually, of our leadership team. We just hired a CEO and chief product officer to be like, who do we want to be when we grow up? So it's fun. It's a lot. I'm working a lot, but with the hope that one day I'll have many more zeros in my bank account than I currently do. Yeah.
Well, when we jump offline, I'll give you a couple intros on that side.
Well, if somebody has a truck parking lot and they are running it off of Google spreadsheets and want to get in touch with you, what would the best way to reach out?
The best way is to literally call our office, right? 305-413-0294. Check out our website. We're on all the socials. But if you call us, someone in the office is going to take care of you right away.
A real person. Well, Jake, I appreciate it. And
Thanks for having me.
I hope you have a great rest of your day.
You too.
That's it for the Stashcast. Subscribe, share, and stay ahead in commercial real estate and prop tech. See you next time.